Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the TraderMerlin Show. It is your Monday edition, the 11th of March today. I was meaning to do a show last week. It was actually the 1-year anniversary of Bob Dunn's passing away. I think that was March 3rd. So maybe I'll do a little special show later on this week as a memorial to Bob Dunn. Anyway, happy Monday. Hope you enjoyed your weekend. Did something fun. Today we're going to have an exciting show as well. As I mentioned, I don't bring too many guests on the program anymore. It's just a lot of work. I'm going to have 2 guests on this week. We'll have John O'Donnell on today and Jerry Baldwin going to be on Thursday. Today's show is going to revolve around some interesting topics. We're going to talk about metals. Of course, I did a metals revival about a week or so ago, kind of talking about the resurgence of metals and the great breakout on gold. We'll also look at some of the deficit issues, which I think is going to be continued to plague our markets and our politicians as we run towards this election time. And then Bitcoin and MicroStrategy. Of course, John O'Donnell is my guest today. John, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Merlin. I tell you, when you mentioned Bob Dunn, I also got very close to Bob Dunn, and I miss him dearly, probably just like you do. And it'd be kind of fun when you do that show to have on a few old OTA people that were close to Bob, and they can deliver their best Bob Dunn story.
Oh, I tell you, that might actually work. Although it'd be tricky to have that many people. Because I know a lot of people would want to be on that. Let me think about how I do that one with. Because I'm going to have maybe you
have 3 or 4. Maybe you have to cherry pick it, or have them text you their best Bob Dunn story.
Oh, no way. Michael Young and Craig Weil can only tell a Bob Dunn story like they can tell it. You got to have them in on it.
Well, I've got my own, and yeah, they would be great. There's no question about it.
All right,
but I got my own story from the OTA days.
All right, well, don't give it away today. Maybe let me see if I can.
I won't. Just let me know what it's going to be. I miss Bob dearly. We used to compare grandchildren, and we had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, good guy, wild man. It was definitely a fun one to have conversation with. It's funny because he taught at the Irvine Center quite often, and my favorite moments actually was getting together with the real Chicago traders, not the guy who pretended like he was on the floor, but like Craig Weil and Michael Young. Those guys just love going out at the conferences, and we just have dinner and I get to hear all these old war stories from the Chicago trading floor days that I just get to live vicarious with them. So it was a lot of fun.
You remember a few of those from Dan Sugar?
Yeah. I remember Dan Sugar. Yeah. I remember Dan Sugar before he went off the political rails and just basically devoted his life to trashing anybody that wasn't Donald Trump. But, that's okay. We all have our opinions and things we can do. But political rails are a fun one to jump off of every now and again. Let's start off with our first category, which, as the graphic here will dictate, we're going to talk about metals. Now, is there a specific area? I know you were a silver reclamator back in the days, and silver was your big thing, and then you were really big on gold for the longest time. And I dare say it, but I think you've been orange pilled and are now more of a Bitcoin fan than gold fan. But let's talk about your stance on metals and what's going on in that landscape.
Well, first of all, you're right. I've had a very direct pecuniary relationship with precious metals since 1968. And as a kid, I had a paper route. And the coins, when I was a kid, were denominated 90% silver, 10%. So the coins pre-1964, my father ran a retail pharmacy. So I've always handled a lot of precious metals. And so I've had a relationship with them since I was a child. That being said, as I got out of college, the first step into precious metals, I got a hold of Harry Brown's book, How to Profit from the Coming Devaluation. And it's a classic. You can go, and it's still in print, I believe. You can get it at Amazon. It's probably trading as a collectible nowadays. But it turned me on. It talked about that Nixon was going to be forced to devalue the dollar. We were going to go off a gold standard, and you should buy gold, silver, and Swiss francs. And I started buying gold, and it was $45 in London, and you could buy it in $20 gold pieces, St. Gaudens and others, and sovereigns. I started buying British sovereigns first. precious silver coins were trading at $1,150 a bag for $1,000 face value bag of silver coins. And companies like Monex, you could put $150 down. They give you a loan for the other $1,000, and you could have a permanent long position in silver coins with no chance of margin call, because the coins are never going to be less than $1,000. And so, but I'm glad to see it took so long. As you know, when I came to Online Trading Academy, I was a big advocate for gold, because gold, I saw gold go from $45 to 800, from 800 back to 250. And when I came to OTA in around 2000, gold was still at about 250, and I was beating the drum on that trading floor. You probably recall being probably one of the most outspoken gold advocates, but you couldn't give away gold at 250 an ounce. And people started to make fun of me being a gold bug, and you're just a boomer, and here you are beating this gold drum. Nobody wants it, and blah 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 blah. And I've said, well, so be it.
Does the love for gold? Let me ask you this one: does the love for gold stem from the classic economic perspective that there's that flight to security, that it is a quasi hedge for the markets, but also that it's that tangible, I can hold it, it's a real world asset, versus a share of Enron or WorldCom, which sounds great at the time, but then they could just disappear at any moment. Did part of that allure, was that part of it for you?
My part of allure for me was the Austrian School of Economics. Harry Browne was a devout, great communicator from Southern California, wrote for an economics article for the Long Beach newspaper, and was a big advocate of gold and gold as money, just like Ron Paul, or he was a follower of Mises and Rothbard and Hayek. And so I was entitled to the integrity of the money, and I didn't trust paper money. And and then I got, as I started to read Austrian economics and go to gold money shows, so to speak, I became friends with Murray Rothbard, the great Murray Rothbard, who wrote a seminal book you can get on Amazon, or you can get it at Mises.org for free. And the title of the book, it's a little handbook of about 65 pages, is What Has Government Done to Our Money? Mm-hmm. And it goes through the whole history of how government debased the currency, starting with, the first central bank that went under. And I think that book was published in the mid 60s, because we had just gone off the silver coin standard, or the gold standard, in 71. And he forecasted all of these events taking place. So I was a school teacher in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I became a kitchen table coin dealer. And I started calling people that I knew had some discretionary income, like doctors, dentists, and believe it or not, chiropractors. Back in those days, chiropractors had a lot of cash money laying around, telling them on why the dollar was going to be devalued, and they should buy some gold and silver coins from me. And that eventually, when Nixon would close the gold window, we'd have a nice capital gain. And it happened right according chapter by chapter to the book. The timing was off a little bit, but my first attraction I got an economic education. I abandoned Keynesian economic principles, and I enjoy Austrian economic principles to this day, that has led us on, even to take it forward to today, to the digital gold story, which of course is Bitcoin.
Right. Well, let's get into the digital one in a minute. As we watch gold, obviously you look back to when you were talking about it back in 2000 and annoying us on the trading floor, talking about gold all the time. As I was watching Amazon move 50% in a day, you're like, gold, like, John, that's boring compared to what's moving over here. it is that fear factor, that flight to security. Do you think that and you mentioned that for you didn't trust fiat. As we look at this chart here's the monthly of gold futures. We're at all-time highs. It's got a great ascending triangle formation. Actually, it's broken out of it now, which tells me it's going to be going higher. We're at 2188 on gold futures as we speak. Do you think that this is reflecting that attitude of I just don't trust, maybe that the deficit's so high or potentially going to default as the U.S.?
Well, I don't trust that inflation is under control.
Right.
And I don't trust either Trump or Biden to get their deficits under control. And I don't trust the Federal Reserve System to do what they need to do. So I have a great distrust, regardless of what political party's in power. My whole life, it didn't make a difference whether you were Democrat or Republican. We ran deficits.
Right.
And at the end of the day, the data is the data. I mean, the trend is your friend until the bend in the end. Well, I don't see a bend coming in deficits and really getting the inflation under control. So, but let me correct something. I try to use constant dollars. I don't believe in the value of gold at an all-time high in fiat money. If you look at the purchasing power of the fiat money over the last 10 years, we've had a couple of different political administrations in, and if you discount the purchasing power of the dollar back for 10 years, gold is not at all-time high in net purchasing power. Correct. Relative to a basket of currencies. So I still, I will take the distrust of government when it comes to currency and debasement issues and deficit spending issues. I'll probably take that to my grave.
Yeah. I'm trying to bring up a chart of the deficit. Unfortunately, it's taking forever to load here. Well, there it is. So this is from bipartisanpolicy.org. Looking at this price or this chart here, this shows you the deficit kind of spending by year. And if you look through this, the most recent ones seem to have the sharpest acceleration, and all of them are showing increased deficits and moving to the upside. So, John, if that in fact is the case, how do we fix that? Obviously, we've just had a resolution to our debt ceiling. What fixes this? Because in my lifetime, I only recall one period where we actually had at least was a budget surplus under Clinton. And at the time, I didn't know enough about economics to really understand what that was all about. But, what is it? Does it just heavy hand have to come in and just start firing people and saying, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, restructure all the government organizations? Because to me, that's impossible.
Well, the first thing we need to do, first of all, what I'm about to say is going to be extremely difficult.
Oh, boy.
But we have to take the bad medicine, when we get the cold that bothers us. I would start with term limits. And number two, I would start with an aggressive private sector campaign to get a more educated, informed electorate. But people don't understand. These politicians get on the air and they make all these promises, and both parties do this. The voters don't understand. They've never heard of Austrian economic principles. They had a chance to elect Ron Paul. Ron Paul would have made a tremendous difference just in educating the American electorate. Now, he would cut budgets like crazy. He would have gotten rid of all the pork in the budgets, we would have probably, if you read Murray Rothbard's book on America's Great Depression and what is the cure today, because there's some similarities. It's let the free market work, let pricing work, let prices fall to a level where supply and demand are in equilibrium, and the economy will take care of itself. But that's tough medicine. Really tough medicine.
Well, because what'll happen is it's going to be immediate finger pointing. If he went in there and made all these cuts, you're going to have the opposition is going to go, see, you're creating unemployment, you're firing all these people, you're removing money from this, that, and the other sector. It seems like you always have griping no matter what, even though it's better, most likely, in the long run for our economy and markets as a whole. There'll always be that piece that's trying to use that as political warfare to get themselves elected.
Of course they will. Of course they will. And that's why it's not going to happen. Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like it would be like in Great Britain trying to lay the axe to the roost of socialized medicine. It isn't going to happen. There's no like it's like some politician coming forward saying they're going to cut Social Security. It's not going to happen. We boomers vote. And so we're not going to take the soft medicine. But the answer to your question is to probably kind of do what Elon Musk did with X. He walks in carrying a kitchen sink, and he fired what 80% of the staff in 24 hours.
And everybody said they weren't going to make it, and they're doing great.
They're doing fine, and other companies are doing the same thing. And now new technologies are rolling out, like AI, that's going to lift productivity or output per worker, and that will help grow the economy if we can finally settle down and get AI to work properly. But then the greenies are going to complain like hell because the AI data centers are going to consume more electricity than Bitcoin mining centers.
There's always going to be something bad. John, one of the viewers says the quality of public education is an all-time low for a reason. Yeah, I'd agree, and I think it's not just that it's an all-time low. I think that we're teaching them the wrong things. This has been one of the pieces that's bugged me. Is like, why aren't we taught in 5th grade, 4th grade, 3rd grade? Like, here's how you balance your checkbook, and here's where money comes from, and here's the value of it.
Why don't we teach them? Why don't we get them that? I'll tell you what. I'll underwrite for everybody. We'll raise some money and give Murray Rothbard's book, which we could buy for probably 50 cents in bulk, to every public school kid and have a conversation around what is the history of our money. And let's take a look at it. No politician wants to have that conversation. It's not even issue if and when there will be a presidential debate. Not even on the board for conversation.
Well, John, the problem with that is you're assuming that today's kids can read and write. They don't write because they're using computer programs for it, and they don't read anymore because now you just go to audio books, books on tape, and have everything read to you. So it's a different dynamic,
Then let's make them a podcast. Let's make them a cartoon. I don't know, but we've got to start somewhere, Merlin. And I'm seeing it. I've got grandchildren, and I'm seeing it in the work they were bringing home when the schools were closed down out here. And I always give my kids a 1 ounce silver eagle, and they're looking at this thing, and then they start to ask questions. Well, what is this for? How do I use it at my candy store or whatever? And it starts a conversation about why are you giving me silver coins? What is this about? Next thing you know, they're looking up the price of silver on Google. Oh, let's take a look at the history of the price of silver. How has it changed? And it starts with money. Money is 50% of every transaction. It's 50% of every transaction in the world. Unless you're in a barter economy.
Yeah,
so at the end of the day, let's have a conversation about it.
We may be at a barter economy sooner rather than later if we come up with this central bank digital currency that I think a lot of people will be opposed to. So you talked about kind of these deficits, which are just going straight up. Don't really see anything changing there. Does there come a point?
Did you
Uh-oh, you froze.
see Biden's budget proposed today?
I did not see it today. What does it say?
$1.8 trillion. Yes.
Sweet. Okay.
1.8 trillion.
Well.
Now the question is, where's that money going to come from? Where's it going to come from?
Taxes. And he says he's going to lower taxes. I don't know. You either cut jobs, you get people out of the way so that there's less spending on jobs, or raise taxes.
None of those taxes, but none of those taxes are going to happen. You're not going to tax the rich any more than what you get. The rich are smart enough to figure out a way around it.
Right.
Rich are smart enough to leave the country. They're smart enough to leave New York, I'll tell you that, and move to Florida, where it's whereas a much lesser tax.
Actually, let me correct you there, John.
For Texas,
I don't believe that the rich are smart enough to get around the taxes. The rich are smart enough to hire lawyers and teams of people who are extremely smart and can get around all the taxes.
and what's the end result?
Yeah, the end result is they're going to pay less taxes. Uh-oh.
Dramatically less.
Yeah.
It's always going to get passed through one way or the other, usually in a hidden form to the middle class. The low class people aren't paying any taxes, but let's be fair here. The most insidious tax of all is not the graduated income tax; it's inflation, because inflation hits everybody.
Yeah,
everybody.
But John, inflation's under control. Come on, it's at 2.5%. Everything's good. We're looking great right now. My nose is growing, by the way, in case you can't see that.
What have you been smoking, bro? What have you been smoking? Come on. You gave this stuff up.
I did, John. I'm done.
They can't even measure inflation. I mean, it's so ridiculous. They don't even measure it properly. And the measuring tools they use are deceptions. It's ridiculous, to give cover to the Fed like that. And Ron Paul wouldn't have done any of that. He'd have called them all out. And that's why, Ron Paul's too honest to get elected.
Right.
We don't elect honest people. All right, let's get off politics.
Let's get off politics.
Blood pressure went up 20.
I don't know. All right. So our last graphic there was to show we had metals, we got deficits, and Bitcoin. But you wanted to look at this from kind of a two attack front, which was, you mentioned Bitcoin, but you also mentioned MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor, who is the king of the orange pill. So talk to me, start either way that you would like, and we'll see where that one, where it takes us, talking about Bitcoin or MicroStrategy.
All right. Well, let me finish my thought on gold, if you don't mind.
Yep.
I'm bullish on gold. And there's plenty of room for gold and Bitcoin
John, do me a favor, turn your video off, John. It's eating up your bandwidth. Turn your video off, and I'll get your picture here. Just to hit the camera off. You're skipping audio, so just cut that down. There you go. Perfect.
Turn it off?
Yep. I still have your audio, and I'll put a picture up for you.
Okay. Our gold chart. I'm bullish on gold, but I really like. I like that. There's a chart on TradeView I'd like you to pull up.
Okay.
I want you to pull up a 10-year chart, approximately a 10-year chart, or a 7 or a 10-year chart, depending on how much bandwidth you got there, of gold divided by Bitcoin, or Bitcoin divided by gold. I don't care which way you put the denominator, but let's take a look at that chart.
Okay. I don't. Let's see. Do you see?
Well, you can use GLD. You can use. You could probably use.
Okay, so here's gold divided by Bitcoin, and it's a beautiful downward sloping chart. In 2012, it shows a reading of about 760, and right now it's showing 0.002.
When I was at Online Trading Academy and we were having those conversations, and everybody was throwing cereal at me because I was bullish on gold at 250. We got it almost up 10x since those days. Look what's happened to Bitcoin. I mean, if we had just started 10 years ago, my God, if you can throw a third chart on, throw MSTR on top of that and compare it to both of those. If you can throw three lines on that chart, you're going to see that MicroStrategy has outperformed all these. But I think Bitcoin is now giving us the best indicator, which tells us that the purchasing power of Bitcoin is eating the lunch of all the fiat currencies. There are 168 fiat currencies in the world. Bitcoin is I think there are only 4 currencies, M2, that has greater market cap than Bitcoin.
Yep. So
if you think about that, it's ridiculous. And then if you take a look at MSTR, when I was at Online Trading Academy, 80% of my exposure was toward gold. I would say that 10% of my exposure now is toward gold, Merlin.
Wow.
Now, okay, I mean, I've had a big switch. I'm now, I used to be the preeminent gold bug. Remember
Yep.
what we did for the New York Stock Exchange? Why gold? Why
Yeah,
now?
remember that? Yeah.
My CD today is why Bitcoin? Why now?
Yeah.
And I have totally changed my concentration and my bias because I truly believe when people talk about there's no use case for Bitcoin, I vehemently disagree. It is a superior savings technology. I believe it is a store of value technology. And I believe it's digital property. And I believe it's superior digital gold. If you look at the features of gold and the features of Bitcoin and rate them objectively, and I can, as an advocate for both, I lean in the favor of the Bitcoin as a store of
Yeah. I'm with you 100%, John.
value, a medium exchange.
The thing with
I,
the
by
thing.
the way,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
let me finish my last point. I don't think Bitcoin is a currency. I believe it may evolve to that in another 10, 15, 20 years, but it doesn't mean other currencies can't exist.
Right.
Just like today, we have 160. I mean, there are multiple mediums of exchange that can exist. Like in prison, they use cigarettes and they use stationery and stamps as a currency. Anything can be a currency if a buyer and a seller agree upon settlement. And that's an Austrian principle, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I think the piece that, and I've mentioned this many times to my viewers, and I think a lot of them understand it, is the piece that makes it such a unique asset class is it's the only one that I know for sure has a definitive amount that cannot be manipulated or manufactured and created out of thin air. Whereas they can do stock splits, they can take away shares. There's float. There's outstanding shares. There's all these different metrics that change the valuation.
You can mine more gold. If gold goes to 3,000 an ounce, you know that the gold miners are going to all of a sudden find more of it.
Right. Yep. And the only thing we know for sure with gold is there is a limited amount. They could get down to a level of the Earth's core, and all of a sudden it could be the largest gold mine ever found on Earth, and all of a sudden we have 1,000 times more gold than's ever been discovered, and gold's value drops. Can't happen with Bitcoin. So that's one of the factors that's been driving me.
What we have learned in this experiment is the value of a predetermined scarcity.
Right. Exactly.
And we've only got right now, Merlin. We've only got one asset like that we can lean on that gives us this premium. And by the way, I used to be a fan of Peter Schiff. I don't know what happened to him. But
if you don't understand something, you attack it, and that's pretty much what's been happening.
Well, it's pretty sad, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. John, I've got the chart so for those that are following at home, the price chart down here at the bottom.
Every time he puts on something negative,
he does all the time. The chart at the bottom here is gold futures. I'm assuming that's red. I can't really see colors very well. Red, that's Bitcoin. And then you have MicroStrategy here in this blue, which is over double the rate of returns. And I was kind of curious to see what your opinion on this was. When you look at those price charts, and knowing that MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor, probably the largest individual holder, other than GBTC or Satoshi Nakamoto, the largest individual holder of Bitcoin in the world, why do you think that there's this almost 2x multiplier, particularly in the last couple months, to MicroStrategy's chart versus Bitcoin?
Okay, well, this is important that people get this, and I want you to maybe write these down and do a little research on them, because I was in an exhaustive amount of time coming to the same conclusion, because I was on the precipice of, as the ETFs came about in the first part of January, I was threatening to sell off my accumulated MicroStrategy position. And thank God I didn't, because if we just look at year to date, and we throw up a chart of what Bitcoin's done versus what MicroStrategy's done, why is there such a premium on MicroStrategy? When you buy a share of MicroStrategy right now, you're paying a premium to the net Bitcoin they have on their balance sheet, which, by the way, as of today, is over 205,000 Bitcoin on their balance sheet. The company has a market cap of what was it? A little over 25 lows. Why is it at such a premium? And it has debt. I think it's still carrying its cost basis on its even with its most recent purchase, which was over the weekend.
Yep.
The cost basis on its Bitcoin is 32,000 and change. So if you look at the net equity of the company, and then you add in the software company, and it's a small software company with about $500 million of revenue and about $75 million, running 75% operating margins. How's it going to service all this debt? Well, it's figured out a way to do that. Thirdly, it has rebranded itself as a Bitcoin development company.
Right.
And he said, look, there are real estate development companies. There are software development companies. We've changed our strategy, and we are the preeminent Bitcoin development company. And in his AI, he has launched a new piece of software on business intelligence that ties in Microsoft's AI capability, and which is getting some fantastic exposure, and all that's going to be delivered through the cloud. Okay, versus a subscription model that he's moving away from for his business intelligence business. But we're not buying it for that business. We're buying it for the combination of the two.
Right.
But here's the kicker. Some of the premium is attributed every day to short sellers, covering some of their exposure. Some of it is attributed to the fact that they have become, even before the ETFs, their name or brand is synonymous with having Bitcoin. If you want to have Bitcoin exposure previous to the ETFs, you had to, in your IRA or your Roth IRA, you had to go to MicroStrategy. It was very difficult to put it in your wallet, in your not your keys, not your coins, principles with an IRA. So you had to use MicroStrategy. It's developed a tremendous following under pension plans. Now, some of the thunder has been taken away by the ETFs, but there's room for both of them. Now, here's the other kicker that I believe will continue to sustain a premium of X. This MicroStrategy is going to be eventually admitted to the S&P 500 index. It very well may get submitted and carried by the QQQs, and certainly in NASDAQ. And every time these index are purchased by somebody somewhere in the world, like Vanguard, shares of MicroStrategy have to enter into that computation proportional. So I think it's going to sustain a premium for some time. Also, Michael Saylor, by this acquisition, he just floated another $800,000 loan, and he bought Bitcoin with it, almost all of it, $780,000 worth of it. And he adds more sats per share. Since I've owned MicroStrategy, I've earned every month, with a rare exception, more sats per share. So he has the ability to add Bitcoin at this premium by either issuing debt or issuing equity, and the net shareholder gets more sats per share. And that can quantitatively be computed and followed very nicely. And I expect that trend to continue, because as he gets Correct. 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 You're correct. I got my tongue in front of my brain on that one. But you got the picture. And I think, but let me tell you what's going to give it the biggest boost. It's great that you get more sats per share, even if you start buying it today, because I think that trend is going to continue. Saylor's very aggressive about this. He was a little put off that BlackRock had more Bitcoin in him, and he went out and borrowed
He went
another
past him.
$700 million and bought and went to the front of the bus with over 205,000 Bitcoin.
Gotta love it. So for the audience out there, yes, I did have my microphone off. I was muted because I didn't want to hear me typing. I was just clearing up the fact that Michael Saylor didn't buy 800,000, he bought $800 million. He added 12,000 new Bitcoin to his portfolio. Just making sure we got that. What's 3 zeros amongst friends? Anyway, sorry, yeah, my sound was off. It's back now. I'm good.
That being, like they said, why not, if you're a perma bull on Bitcoin, why not have exposure to both? Now, let me what I have pared back. I have pared since our last conversation. I have pared back my exposure to the Bitcoin miners.
Okay.
Okay, and the reason I have fundamentally, I think it's a crowded trade. We've got the halving coming up. There's gonna be some consolidation, and for a while, I don't know how long that's gonna take. Year, 18 months, 24 months, who knows? And the issue that I have is margins are really going to get pinged.
They're going to get cut in half. Everything's going to get cut in half, John. If everything that the miners are doing is to solve that mathematical puzzle for Bitcoin, and whoever solves it first gets that 6.25 Bitcoin, as of March 1st, it's going to be 3.125. Your profits have just literally got cut in half, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, there's something you can do about it, because your number one operating cost is electricity.
Correct.
Marathon Digital has an experimental project going on in Utah where they have gone out to trash dumps and they put some pipes in the ground and they are collecting methane gas. They're taking their methane gas and running it through a generator, and they're producing Bitcoin with methane gas. So what's so exciting about that is they get the methane gas for free. They also get a tax credit for reducing the methane gas, because every unit of methane gas has 70 times the positive benefit to the environment if we could reduce methane gas. So there are some ways to dramatically reduce your operating costs, but you still got the halving challenge. But it doesn't. But there's going to be a handful of these Bitcoin miners. They're going to become the consolidators, and I happen to believe Marathon will be one of them. But I've still cut my exposure back. If I look at my total portfolio, I've cut my exposure back to the miners simply because we've gotten closer to the halving.
Yeah. And you're right. If you can cut some of those costs, obviously things get better.
Although we've had a good run for the last year.
Yeah. And I think what will happen is you'll start to see that's when that big parabolic move happens.
Remember electricity. Some of the electricity costs they're getting from stranded energy.
Yeah.
Marathon Digital is going out to Paraguay, and they get it really like a penny a killer places where there's stranded energy.
Yeah.
Like, and they're getting cheap energy, but they all have to reduce their input costs of electricity, regardless of what happens to the hash rate.
Let me address a couple questions here from the viewers. Where was that one from Lisa? Does BlackRock have more Bitcoin than MicroStrategy? Well, they did as of Friday. So at Friday, BlackRock was at 195,985 Bitcoin. MicroStrategy was at 193,000, and they bought another 12,000 over the weekend. So now you're looking at 205,000 for MicroStrategy, which puts them in front of BlackRock. But let's be honest, the demand for the spot ETF IBIT has been off the charts as far as, I mean, it's probably the most successful ETF ever created, at least from the initial opening couple of months. Who knows long term how this is going to end up. So
better so than gold, by the way.
correct. And what'll happen is most likely inflows will continue into IBIT, and therefore most likely it will pass Michael Saylor. But right now technically Saylor has more, but I'm pretty sure that BlackRock will have more in the near future.
Well, they will, but then why? No, it's not important to me because I can't get more. If I bought $100 worth of BlackRock IBIT, I can't get more Sats per unit. I can only get more Sats per share when I buy $100 worth of Microsoft or MicroStrategy. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. I also don't get the leverage. I don't get the leverage. I don't get the fact that MicroStrategy is going to get added to the S&P 500. IBIT's not. That's going to be a huge boon to demand for the shares.
Sure.
And don't get Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor's a genius.
Let's be fair, John. He's starting to look like a genius. This could, there is that long shot. This all implodes and he's going to look like a complete clown. But for now, yeah, I mean, he may be the first trillionaire. Who knows? Let me cover one other small little piece that John brought up that I think is very important. He talked about the short squeeze, and that is a very interesting topic, especially. You guys tell me, type it into chat. What percentage of MicroStrategy's shares are short? You guys type it into chat. Let me know what you think. Don't look it up, it's just for fun, but type into chat what you think the percentage of the shares outstanding of MicroStrategy are short. Now, you look at a lot of the big companies, and there's always shares that are short, and it might be 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 10%. In my experience, you start to get to double digits, and that's getting a little heavy out there. I'm going to show you right now what that is. I'll scroll down here. Here's MicroStrategy. John, what do you think it is?
Well, what date is on that?
As of February, well, it's going to be for everybody now, as of February 15th. So we got 3 weeks ago.
Okay, as of 3 weeks ago, I don't know the exact number, but there's been short covering since then.
Oh, I'm sure. They're getting short squeezed. They're forced. So the answer was 22.41% of the float was short. That is a pretty significant number. And, when you look at that chart of MicroStrategy popping like that, let's bring up MSTR. This may be people who they don't want to sell their short or close their short position. They may be margined out. Because look what's happened to MicroStrategy just in the past. Let's say you started shorting this thing back in January because it was on a really nice slide. Even if you shorted on January 1st, which was like the peak, right? And you're loving it, you're making good money. It's risen 139% from that point. You're going to get margined out on that unless you got huge bank accounts. So you're getting people that are forced to buy in, which creates that extra buying pressure to the upside.
Now, how much has Bitcoin gone up since January 1st?
So January 1st, let me bring up the exact numbers here. Bear with me, everybody, as I get that exact number on here. Let's see, is that a green candle? Yeah, so from the open price to to the peak, 67%. So it's a 2x.
All right, and how much has MicroStrategy gone up versus GLD?
Oh boy, now you're killing me. Well, MicroStrategy, we just looked at. Let me bring up I'll bring up the gold futures here. Since January 1st, gold has really not done much at all. The peak that it achieved yesterday, 6.25%.
Pick since June of last year, or since a year ago.
No matter what time frame you pick, there's none of those metrics. You could pick gold going back into the 80s, and it's not going to beat those percentages. I mean,
remember,
to get 100% rate of return, John, you have to go back into 2015 just to get 100%.
To bring in my buddy Murray Rothbard to have a real comparison, you got to talk about what was the purchasing power of the U.S. dollar in 1971 when we went off the gold standard.
Yeah,
I mean, it's crazy numbers.
Well, and it's. The truth is, at some point, this will flatten out, and I think when we get adoption, particularly with Bitcoin, once adoption starts to become an issue, as John, you mentioned, it's not really money because it's not utilized like that. However, you see it being used as money in El Salvador. They are using it, and what happens if Miele of Argentina makes it legal tender? Then there's more doorways open to adoption, and as that starts to implement or I guess infiltrate the Bitcoin community, we get adoption. Prices will start to stabilize, but I think when you look at just a small percentage of global population using it, the potential for more users is exponential. So I'm still very bullish, obviously.
Yep. And by the way, what about Ethereum? I think I've stayed away from ETH, although I've softened up since we had our last conversation.
Yeah, its price hasn't softened up at all.
Well, no, but I'm like glad to see it bumping up against 4,000. That's kind of nice.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, what's going to give ETH a lift is when that ETF, when the lawyers get done pushing that ETF through. That's when it'll have a Bitcoin moment. And
I think, John, there's two things. It'll certainly help. Obviously, the ETH or the Bitcoin ETF, brought in a whole lot of optimism, and it kind of shot the whole thing higher and higher and higher, which is great, and it made it more of a legitimate product. We still have to figure out whether Ethereum is a security or not, because Gary Gensler and his colossal team of ineptitude at the SEC can't figure that out. But I think what'll really cause it is not actually the ETF. I think what's going to happen here is there's a series of upgrades that's supposed to happen for Ethereum. Their roadmap is for the next year. Right now, you're talking about 13 to 15 transactions per second. People are now, because of that slow bottleneck, the fees are really high to use Ethereum. And what happens then is people get frustrated and they say, hey, I'm going to use Solana, which is faster. I'm going to use Cardano, which is faster. I'm going to use Algorand or Avalanche or all these different alternatives because it's much faster than Ethereum and cheaper. If Ethereum can pull off these upgrades, there's 3 of them that are supposed to happen. If they can pull that off, then their scalability is going to go from 15 transactions per second to 150,000 transactions per second. And then what will happen is a lot of the money that's in these other projects that are trying to kill Ethereum will come back into Ethereum because Ethereum will have the market share already. So go back to what's working. So to me, it's a race against time for Ethereum. If they can pull off this upgrade system and get scalability, then it'll really take off. And, is ETH 5,000, 6,000, 10,000 unrealistic? I don't think so. I think it could actually be much higher than that if it, in fact, does get the scalability issue fixed.
Merlin, the last time we had a conversation, you were targeting fourth quarter of 25 as what you believe will be the peak in the Bitcoin price. Have you changed your forecast, or what are you feeling? Where do you stand on that today?
I am still firmly there. I've been telling everybody here, November of 2025 is when I plan on selling everything, not just just Bitcoin or a couple of. I plan on selling everything, and for one big reason is I want to get my tax basis all done because I've got scattered cryptocurrency purchases all over the place, and I'm going to consolidate that down in November of 2025. To be honest, I'm actually thinking of going back probably into October because the more and more that people are realizing this 4-year pattern happens, the more likely it's going to happen. And I think that if you start to sell in November, you might actually be selling as this thing is already falling because some people are going to try to get out earlier. So it may be a little bit earlier than that for me as I start to sell out of some of my positions. But yeah, I am absolutely planning on being completely flat by the end of 2025. All cash.
And what's your target price on Bitcoin?
I have 250 is my median target. I kind of use different calculations, and there's a high range of 375 per Bitcoin, but 250 kind of is that sweet spot in the middle. And the way that this thing is moving, it doesn't seem unrealistic whatsoever at this point.
I believe you put that forecast on, or that calculation on, before we had the ETFs. Do you think the ETFs are going to have enough impact to perhaps give that a bit of a boost?
I do. I think it's not necessarily the ETF that did it. I think it's what the ETF did for Bitcoin as a whole. It now gave it an air of credibility. And again, you look at the largest investment funds in the world are now getting people saying, hey, can you buy me these Bitcoin ETFs to put in my 401ks, my IRAs if they're self-directed? And I think that opens the doorway to more adoption. And adoption's the key to bringing this whole thing to market. So yes, I do think the ETFs helped, but overall it's about getting global understanding of Bitcoin. And there's a really great question, which I will ask you, John, and I'll tackle it. Margaret says, will the U.S. digital currency hurt Bitcoin's rise? So let's talk about your thoughts on a central bank digital currency and what do you think that might do to Bitcoin?
I think we'll eventually have one. I can't. It depends upon how much of a socialistic legislature we end up with. I don't know. I don't know if the Fed can get this done on their own without some legislative support. And if we're going to have another 8 years or so of further leaning left, it will accelerate the CBDC. I hope we don't have it, but I think it's probably unavoidable. It's just a matter of time. How long might it take? Europe certainly is accelerating it. If it finds success in a European laboratory, it very well may accelerate our central bankers moving that forward. But I'm cautiously optimistic we don't have it, because I think it's like Hayek would say, the road to serfdom.
Yeah, I'm not cautiously optimistic that we're gonna. I believe 100%. I guess I can't be definitive. I say 99.999999999% that we will have a central bank digital currency at some point going forward. Is it 5 years from now or 10 years? I don't know, but it just seems that's the logical evolution of money. Now, to the point here, which was from Margaret, which is will it hurt Bitcoin's rise? I don't believe so. Part of me thinks it's actually going to be good for it, because you have a certain subset of people like myself, and I think, John, you might fall into this category as well, which is I just don't trust our banking system. I don't trust my government. I don't trust the financial institutions with my money. We see run on banks. We see confiscation of assets. So while I will always have some money in that central bank digital currency just to do all normal processes, a bulk of my assets are going to be
whether it's digital or not, Merlin. They're still going to.
Great, your
They're
mic.
still going to debase the currency.
Yes.
Whether it's a CBDC or not, they're still going to run deficits.
Yes.
I mean, it isn't going to do anything but create more global demand for Bitcoin.
Right.
First of all, we haven't seen the sovereign wealth funds yet get involved. We haven't seen the wirehouses yet get involved with this. And I think the ETFs are going to bring in a lot of new participants.
Yes.
Way over and above, that'll have impact way above REIT. But the CBDC may facilitate more currency debasement. It'll be easier. It'll certainly cause us to have more government involved in what are you buying this meat for? Don't you know that cows or bovine flatulence is the cause of global warming?
John says, are we saying that both can coexist? Yes. I think that the governments around the world will have a little bit of an issue over time with Bitcoin or digital assets, because, again, they want to know what you're doing. They want to see, and of course, you'll have candidates that are saying, oh, I'm opposed to central bank digital currency because that gets them votes. But in reality, the government wants to know what we're doing with our money and the ability to kind of track and make sure that there's no bad activity going on. And I guess at surface level, I would say I'm fine with that because I'm not doing anything wrong, I'm not doing anything bad. But then again, if I want to go buy a case of Jack Daniels, they should never be able to say, no, that's one of my liberties I have, is I can buy what I want. And no one should watch that and scrutinize my purchases. With the central bank digital currency, I think you will get that. So they can coexist. They are coexisting. That you used to see some merchants accepting Bitcoin. Unfortunately, the payment systems were slow. But remember, this is like going back to 1865 and getting that first car by Carl Benz. It didn't work. It barely functioned. Innovators took something and made it better and better and better. And we're getting there with things like Strike Technologies, Layer 2s, which now could allow us to use Bitcoin for transactions. You were saying something, John?
Yeah, I don't think it's important that we have a Bitcoin as a daily medium of exchange. I don't see people going, as Mike Saylor this morning said on CNBC, look, people don't go down to the local coffee shop and use gold to buy a cup of coffee. I don't see myself going down to my local coffee shop and using my Bitcoin to buy a cup of coffee. It's just not a good use of the resource.
Right.
The best use of the resource is to be a savings technology, to be a store of value, to be a base for a central bank that wants to put something on their balance sheet to complement gold. That's the best, highest use of Bitcoin in my mind. I don't care if it gets currency adaptation for me to go to McDonald's and buy a hamburger. That's not on my radar as a necessity for Bitcoin to have a very wonderful future.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And, when you look at that, I know I've sent this one to you in the past, John, which was the Charles Hoskinson interview with Lex Friedman, where he talked about, what's the far-reaching impact of digital assets? It's not just, hey, let's make a bunch of money. It's about bringing up global civilization with a monetary base, and those that are unbanked, giving them the ability to be banked. And this is a threat. I'll be honest. In my mind, it is a direct threat to central banking and to government's power, because now all of a sudden you can manage your own money and take control of all your own assets. If I have $100,000 that I buy with Bitcoin, it's trapped in that Bitcoin ecosystem, which for me is fine. But from a bank and a government's perspective, that is horrible, because they want it put in a bank. So that bank can now take it, fractional reserve, lend, and that spurs economic growth. So, yeah.
Did you hear that quote by former President Obama last week or last month? He said, Bitcoin, he says, do you really want this? He said, that's like having a Swiss bank account in your pocket. Do you really want that to happen?
Yeah, I do.
There are a few people that would enjoy that, sir.
That's actually a very intelligent thing to say. You hear a lot of politicians say some things that are just outright stupid.
Like Elizabeth Warren.
She's off her rocker, man. It's like, how can you be? You can't be that wrong about a topic and stand in front of a podium and tell the world about it. Like, if you're going to be that dumb, get off the podium. Just bad. Anyway.
Well, I don't know. To compete with that, we had Biden say in his State of the Economy address the other night that he's done a good job of reducing the deficit. And then today he proposes an $1.8 trillion deficit.
John, you said earlier you're for term limits. I got to throw another one out there. I got to say I think, I know this is going to be mean to some, but I think there should also be age limits. Do you know that the current running platform, Donald Trump and Joe Biden, are the two oldest candidates ever to run for president in the United States of America? Do you know who was before that the oldest?
Reagan.
These two.
That's a good gotcha joke.
In 2020, it was the same guys who were running against each other, and they're the oldest in the history. Like, come on, man. You're telling me out of 360 million people, I know we have some Trump lovers here, I know we got some Biden lovers, I know we got Biden haters, and we got Trump haters. I don't care. You're telling me that those two are the best that we have to offer? It's kind of embarrassing to me that is the best that we have to offer. It's just people like argue with each other and bicker with each other and not get things done. Anyway, we're not going into politics. Sorry, I went down that rabbit hole. My bad.
I have to tell you, there was a comedian when Ronald Reagan was debating Jimmy Carter. There was a comedian that said, there's 280 million people that live in America. But he said, you would think we could find two better candidates in this. He said, but 50% of the population is left-handed, and we don't want a left-handed president. He said, the other 50% of the population are bald-headed, and we certainly couldn't stand a bald-headed president. So what do we end up with? We end this guy that got nuked on a nuclear submarine, and another guy who was the lead movie actor in Bedtime for Bonzo. Can't we do better?
We've got to do better. Ugh, that's crazy. Anyway, bottom line is for us.
I think there ought to be an age limit. And by the way, there certainly should be an age and term limit for some of these senators and congressmen.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's bad. But anyway, we could sit here and stand on our soapboxes and bitch about all this different stuff. Bottom line is that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to make money off of whatever the markets throw at me, whether it's long, short, sideways, crypto, silver, gold, MicroStrategy, who cares? It's about securing my financial future because I don't trust anybody else to do it for me. So hopefully that
No.
spurs everyone. John, what else you got on your plate? I was not planning on doing a 1 hour show, but here we are. Let's wrap things up. Anything else you want to share with us? You doing anything fun? You got anything new projects going on or anything? Or are you just retired?
I'm going to buy more MicroStrategy tomorrow morning after talking to you.
Oh, don't put it on me. This is not financial advice. This is
Oh, I know
entertainment.
that. I know. Read the fine print.
All right, I need to put the fine print on here. I got to do it. Well, you know, your MicroStrategy was up 4% today. It's up another 5.5% in the after hours. So I don't know if you're going to get a deal on your MicroStrategy.
Oh, they must have heard that I'm going to be buying a few shares.
Yeah. Well, just sell puts on it. Just sell puts and just keep collecting premium.
Well, that's a good idea. I mean, that is a really good idea. And we're going to have puts and calls on these ETFs coming up
Coming up
too,
soon.
and that's gonna be exciting going forward. What do you expect to happen this year? You have a price target for December by December this year?
For Bitcoin?
Yeah.
I don't. You know, people have asked in the chat about the Bitcoin ETF, and does that change my prognosis or prognostication that we'll be at 250 by the end of next year? And it really doesn't. If you look back at all the last four major 4-year cycles, there's some element that has caused demand to surge that last year. And does this new ETF make up that component of new demand being brought in? I think it's a combination of three things. It's demand. It's the ETFs, which increase that demand. It's also going to be the halving, which means supply decline. So the ETF spurred demand. The supply is going to drop here. We're going to go from 900 created a day to 450. And then you have, there's one other element that I think was really critical. All right, we got them out. Regulatory. You know, I think that once we get a change of administration, I do believe you'll start to see a lot more, both sides of the aisle, make it very clear their policy with regards to digital assets and cryptocurrencies. And there are quite a lot of people like myself that think that it is a viable business opportunity for businesses. It also represents, a way for me to have choice as a consumer. And I'll be voting. That will be one of the concerns I have is this president or are these senators going to be pro-digital assets? And I will vote for that. So to me, that's big. And I think that that's going to be the catalyst that pushes it all the way through to keep this at a true 4-year cycle. I think we'll probably be around 100,000 by the year end. We did a poll on this program a couple days ago that said, do you think that Bitcoin will hit 100,000 this year? And I think we had 77% of the people said yes. You look how much it's moved just in the past couple months. 100,000 is not that far off. So I don't have a target for the end of the year, but I do think 100,000 is definitely on plate.
Your mouth to God's ear, but I think you're kind of light on your forecast, brother.
I hope so. You know what? If I'm wrong and at the end of the year it's 150 or 200 or hell, a million, even better. But again, I don't really care because my timeline is next year, right? It's really September, October. I'll start thinking about it, evaluating it. If I look at Bitcoin and it's trading $1 million, I'll probably just unload it all anyway. I'm set, done. I can move on because with Bitcoin's at $1 million, my other portfolio is going to be substantially higher as well, and I'll probably still do this show for free, but I will definitely be moving away from a lot of things.
Kathy, what's that one analyst?
Kathy Wood.
Kathy Wood has bumped up. She's talking about $1 million Bitcoin. She used to say it was post 2030. Now she thinks it's going to be
earlier,
before 2030.
I think so too. It's just simply supply and demand. I mean, and that's why I love it because I look back at my business school and all the business stuff. It's the core backbone for everything that you purchase in life. And the math is just you can't obfuscate the numbers of Bitcoin. They're right in your face. We can see all the demand. We can see all the charts. We can see the production and all of it. It's clear where it's going to go. I mean, the math equation it's hard to make a mistake there. It's straight up.
It's the power of absolute scarcity and more sats per share on a regular basis.
That's it. All right, John. Well, hey, I appreciate you coming on again. It's been a pleasure. Good to see you're doing well. And I'll be reaching out to you and having more conversation with you here soon. I hope you're doing well.
It sounds good. And also, put my X address up, would you?
Your X address. Yeah.
Where?
Yeah, let me bring it. I had it up there. Let's just do.
Wherever.
There you go. Hold on, everybody. I'll put it up there so you can follow John. Let's see. I usually put it on the company, and I'll do it's at Rainmaker OTA. All right, so I'll put that up there, and now you guys can all see it. You don't get to see John's face, but there is his Twitter handle if you want to check him out. John is always posting some good stuff on there. So, John, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on the program today. We'll look forward to having you back on again soon, my friend.
I enjoyed it.
All right, take care. All right, everybody, I'm going to wrap things up here for today. I didn't even get a chance to look at all these charts. I had so much I want to talk about, but I'm well over an hour. And for those of you who know the history between John O'Donnell and myself, these shows always go an hour. John likes to talk. I like to talk to John, and you guys ask some great questions. So I appreciate that. As I mentioned, we're going to have Jerry Baldwin going to be on Thursday. So tomorrow I'll catch up and go over our markets. I didn't get a chance to look at them too close, or at least for you guys, didn't get a chance to break down our markets. But I'm well over an hour, and my goal was no 1 hour shows. But Big Ab, he's keeping track. I think I've done more 1 hour shows this year than not. So there we go. Again, Bitcoin breaking that 72,000 mark on the futures, 72,600 right now, and looking really, really good. We'll look at all those markets start off tomorrow's show. So take care, everybody. Have a fantastic remainder of your day, and I will see you tomorrow.